Hi, friends. Susan Blackwell from the Spark File here to let you know that the doors are open for the Spark File Illume, a 9-month group creativity coaching mastermind that invites you to be the Chief Creative Officer and Chief Marketing Officer of your creativity. But what does that mean? That means in 9 months in Illume, you will clarify and advance your big creative goals and learn how to effectively share your work with the world. Now, if you're listening to this and you're an experienced creative or an accomplished professional who seeks a space where it is safe to attempt something you've never tried before, or complete a big creative project, or take your work to the next level and acquire the skills needed to share your creative work with the world, Illume might be right for you. We are calling in emotionally intelligent, high-functioning creatives who are ready to level up. You can find out more by going to thesparkfile.com/Illume, but do it now to find out if Illume is right for you and to save with early bird discounts. That's thesparkfile.com/Illume. Take a leap, take a risk. Go to thesparkfile.com/Illume and join us for Illume.
The Sparkfile podcast may contain profanity and other adult content.
Please use your discretion.
When I bump into something that inspires me, I dump it in my spark file. Could be something that I want to make or how I want to be. I pump it in my spark file. I jump into my spark file. Let's open up the spark file.
Welcome to the Spark File, where we believe that everyone is creative, but smart creative people don't go it alone.
I'm Laura Camion.
And I'm Susan Blackwell, and we are creativity coaches who help people fear less, create more, and bring their creative visions to life.
If you're an OG member of the Sparkfile community, welcome back, Sparkler.
If you're joining us for the first time, well, hello. Welcome, friend.
Know that just by listening to this podcast, you're joining a warm and wonderful clan of creatives.
But you may be asking yourself, what exactly is a Spark File?
A Spark File is a place where you consistently collect all your inspirations and fascinations.
If you're like us and you're making stuff all the time, or you want to be making stuff all the time, you know if you're not careful, your little campfire of creativity can flicker out.
But don't despair. We're collecting kindling in the form of fresh ideas, images, and inspiration that spark creativity and pique curiosity.
To light a fire under our collective asses to make things like this podcast.
Or a commitment to continual discomfort for the sake of personal growth and creativity.
Ooh.
Every episode, we're going to reach into our spark files and exchange some sparks. And from time to time, we're going to talk to some folks who spark us too.
That means we have more sparks than we can possibly use in this lifetime.
So if something lights you up, we encourage you, we beg you, we implore you to take that thing and make something out of it.
Without further ado, let's open up
The
Spark
File.
Laura Camion.
Susie B.
Laura Camion, I started telling you about this off mic, but I'm bringing it onto the mic.
I hope it's what I think it is. Please tell me more.
It is. There's an article that just came out in the New York Times as of the recording of this podcast that is all about this gloomy octopus. That is its name. And it is a small club of animals that toss things at other members of their own species. And
oh my
literally,
God.
the URL is newyorktimes.com/2022-11/octopus throwing silt. And I was reading this last night on my phone before I went to sleep, and they have these beautiful little videos, and the little, what do they call it, at the bottom of this one video says, "Someone fooled around and found out," which is the New York Times way of saying someone fucked around and found out. And it shows this pissed off, gloomy little octopus just spitting silt at his little neighbor octopus, who I don't know if the neighbor is too close.
Fucking
And
love it.
it's also throwing like empty shells at its little friend who it's pissed off at. But they're
Does
not
it spit too, or is it just throw stuff?
It does all manner of things, but they're trying to determine if it's actually throwing it at its little neighbor there or like what it's doing.
This is amazing. And I feel like it like is resonating so much. Because remember I did that Spark, My Octopus Teacher, that documentary?
This is why I thought of you. But of course.
And then Fuck Around and Find Out was in another episode. I'm just like,
this has you written all over it.
How did they know?
How did they know, Laura Camion?
But also I love, because you and I'm going to share a little bit, listeners, we are committed to our collaboration, and we always are talking about like learnings and observations. And one thing like this relates to, we talk about like there are people who, when irritated about potentially anything, kind of go around just chucking shit at other people who are completely unrelated to why they're gloomy or grouchy.
Yeah, it can just squirt out sideways, just like that gloomy octopus
on other people, just going around.
that fart sound you made, completely, it just synced up perfectly with this video of the gloomy octopus rising up out of the floor of the ocean and just going 1, 2, 3 on his friends. That was beautiful.
But this is like, this little guy is like a lesson in like, people don't crap on your friends, don't crap on your loved ones just because you're, having a bad day. Try to articulate what's going on. You don't have to poop on people.
Don't be a gloomy octopus.
Don't be a gloomy octopus. I love this so much, Suze. Thank you.
You're on my mind all the time, Laura Camion. Laura, you got anything for me from over there?
Oh, Suze, I got a big old spark is what I have.
Woohoo!
I got a big old one. So I feel like I better get into that. It's got side sparks. It's got it all. Yeah.
All right. I'm into it.
So I had, well, first of all, I've been having like seriously social weeks because a lot of our sparklers are traveling to New York, dropping in, or doing performances and whatnot. So I've been out and about.
You have been.
Sparking it up. And one of our dear sparklers, Alex Gardner, hi, Alex. We had coffee when she was in town, and she shared a spark with me that was so spot on. It was one of those sparks where you just immediately know, like, oh, this is for me. I need to hear this. And also your brain is already like, my brain was like 3 beats ahead. Like, I need to run with this idea and make this idea my own, which is what I instantly did.
Oh my gosh.
So I can't wait to tell you.
When Alex shared it, was she like, I think this might be a spark? Or
oh,
was
yeah,
she
was.
Oh, she knew.
Yeah. And also, I'll just say, it was so delightful because she was talking about the podcast. And let me tell you, friends, Susan and I can't remember half of the things that we have said on this podcast. But when someone is like, you know what spark I loved? I loved this spark. It jogs a memory. And Alex was like, I loved that breakfast cereal spark. And I was like, I'd forgotten all about it. And I am still convinced that someone needs to write a screenplay about
the Champions of Breakfast.
Champions of Breakfast, but also specifically Post, his daughter, who then became like really like one of the early female CEOs.
Marjorie, was that her name?
Marjorie Post. Marjorie Post, friends, go back and listen if you want like a really great story idea. She's something else. Anyway, Alex reminded me of that. So it was great. It was really delightful to revisit that spark.
And then Alex slid this juicy spark across
and then
the table.
Alex said, might I slide this juicy spark your way?
Thank you, Alex. I'm so excited.
So Alex told me about this book, The Comfort Crisis by Michael Easter. And this book is about embracing discomfort in order to reclaim your wild, happy, healthy self. And I was like, I'm interested in this. I'm excited to tell you about this book because this book is interesting, but I also want to go a step further because my immediate interest, of course, was like, do these analogies extend to the world of creativity? because I think we have a comfort crisis in creativity as well.
Huh.
And the book barely touches that. So, what I'm going to do is take the sparks that Michael Easter gave me, and I'm going to weave my creativity thoughts and theories throughout.
I love it.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So, here it is. The premise of the book really is that the comforts that we assume so easily in our day to day have existed really for the tiniest fraction of time in terms of humanity.
Mm-hmm.
Like for hundreds of thousands of years, every single day was a fight for survival for humans. And most of history, humans spent every waking moment in movement, literally on the search for food or on the search for shelter. Suze, did you see this video? You might have, because I sent it to one of our sparklers because it reminded me of Chris Pappas. Chris Pappas, hi, if you're listening. But I sent it on Voxer, so you might see it there. But it is, the author John Green posted it on his socials, like his TikToks. And basically, he described a really fun way to think about human history, kind of a terrifying way. But humans have been around for 300,000 years, which is just kind of too big of a number to comprehend. So John Green is like, if you condense all of human history down to one calendar year, and just imagine that on January 1st, humans emerged on Earth, and today is December 31st at 11:59 p.m. All of human history happens between January 1st and 11:59.
Yep.
And he goes on to, this is like the quickest video, but he's like, in January, we know that long distance trade in South Africa happened and the use of fire happened in January. By April, we know that humans were using grass and insect repellent plants for bedding. By May, clothing was common. By July, August, humans were making symbolic art and paintings and cave drawings, etc. By December 15th, the first evidence of consistent use of agriculture. December 25, the Great Pyramid of Giza is built.
Okay.
December 28, Julius Caesar becomes emperor of Rome. December 28, Mongolian Empire, the Magna Carta, the emergence of nation states, the Industrial Revolution, the invention of the novel, the microscope, the scientific method, the awareness that we are in a vast and possibly infinite universe, Hamlet, the printing press, the Black Plague, all happened today, December 31st.
Wow.
And he tells us that in this calendar of human history, photography, recorded music, 2 world wars, space travel, computers, the internet, automobiles, social media, light bulbs, the atom bomb, all happened in the last 5 hours.
Wow.
So it kind of puts in perspective. I thought that little video did a lot to help wrap my brain around like what Michael Easter is talking about in the comfort crisis. He's really asking us to think about how comfortable human beings have become in a very short period of time. And on this calendar, we're really talking about like in the last 15 minutes of human history.
Yeah.
Refrigeration has only been around for 100 years. I mean, before that, even if you had food, it wasn't going to last long. Like you had to concern yourself with where the next meal was going to come from. Of course, now our next meal can be delivered any hour of day or night.
DoorDash it, baby.
And I understand this is a very privileged conversation. This is not true of all humans on Earth.
Correct.
This happens to be true of the majority of Americans. So I don't want to say this is true for everyone. But humans in general have come a long, long way. As for comfort in our homes, heating our homes has only been around for 150 years. Even then, you had to continually feed the system coal or have firewood. You had to put an ongoing effort into staying warm or thinking about where you might be able to stay warm. Air conditioning wasn't widely used until the 1960s, so thinking about how you were going to cool off or stay out of the heat was a constant. The point is, all this comfort that we now enjoy, it's new to humans. It's very new. But what scientists and sociologists and anthropologists are all finding is that this comfort does not make us happier. In fact, our ancestors, who were always on the run, were likely much happier than we are. They were naturally mindful and always living in the moment.
Yeah, because they thought they were going to get eaten by a saber-toothed tiger. That'll bring you into the moment.
That'll bring you into the present moment, but like just did not have time to deal with existential examinations, like criticisms about the past and dread about the future.
Yeah.
What we've done with all this extra time we've given ourselves with these comforts is fill it with worry. We have filled it with anxiety about things that, frankly, we don't need to worry. We're actually not going to get eaten by a saber-toothed tiger, but we are going to sit around in our comfortable homes thinking about the past, worrying about the past, dreading the future, etc. We have created so many technological advances in order to free up our time, and instead of using the newly acquired time to truly live, you could argue, as he does in this book, that we have used this time to numb ourselves. Overworking, food, alcohol, screen time, which has led to more mental health challenges such as anxiety and burnout. As this relates to creatives specifically, I will add this. Does any of this feel true? Maybe you do have more time in your schedule than you realize currently, or you specifically free up some time. And instead of creating, we worry about what people might think about our creation. If we make it, we worry about how it compares to other creations, and on and on. And isn't it just more comfortable to stay on the couch, what you and I might call status quo street, than it is to get up and try something new? One of the huge takeaways that I took from this book is about how our brain works in regard to problems. It's called problem creep. Well, scientifically, it's called prevalence-induced concept change, but that's sort of a mouthful. So we'll go with problem creep. And what it means is that as we experience fewer problems, we don't become more satisfied. Instead, we lower our threshold for what we consider a problem. And we end up with the same number of troubles, except our new problems are progressively more hollow. What it means is that when there are no problems, our brains are programmed to look for more problems. Michael Easter says the same thing happens with our comfort levels. Today's comfort is tomorrow's discomfort. So as we solve one comfort issue, our brain looks for the next one. As we do that, we keep shrinking our comfort zone. And the problem is that all of this happens unconsciously. We're not reliable at noticing that comfort creep is consuming us and what it's doing to us. So again, I'm going to pause and really think about how this relates to our creativity. Think back to a time when perhaps we used to run and play and put on shows and draw and paint and pluck away at the piano and build stuff, invent games, sing, dance. When did we start narrowing and narrowing and narrowing what we allowed ourselves to do creatively? One by one, many of these things became uncomfortable to us. Why? Maybe because we compared ourselves to others, because someone made a mean comment, didn't understand our work. Maybe a teacher told us we weren't cut out for it. We were told our gender didn't sew, our gender didn't take woodwork classes. What potential sources of joy have you cut out of your life because pursuing them brought some discomfort?
But do you also think that some of those things fell away because a responsibility amps up as you age?
Oh, sure. I'm giving an extreme example, but the point is, any of those things, if you have a free afternoon, you are not likely to reach for any of those things that you gave up at age 12. It feels uncomfortable, is the point. It feels uncomfortable. Maybe because we are not good enough at it, maybe because of some comment in the past or some criticism, but we stopped giving ourselves permission to pursue a lot of creative activities. And I'm just curious for all of us to think about like how many things we back away from for fear that we're going to be uncomfortable. That is what this whole book is about. This book is questioning what would happen if we could become more consciously aware of the comfort creep that's happening in our lives and how we're narrowing and narrowing what we feel comfortable doing. So, Michael Easter approached it in this way. He gave himself a challenge. He decided to give up all the comforts of his modern life and go for a month-long hunting trip in the Alaskan wilderness, sleeping in a tent, hunting or scavenging for food, staying warm by a fire. I mean, this book was really a fun read because so much of it was through the lens of this like Alaskan adventure.
And you do love Alone.
I do love Alone. I do love those survival skills. But it's also not very practical that we're all going to scrap our lives for a month and go live in the Alaskan wilderness.
Right.
Although, with our dear client Carrie Seward there in Alaska, maybe we could at least visit.
Hey, Carrie. Knock,
Hi,
knock.
Carrie. But we don't have to spend, we don't have to go that extreme. But I would like to dissect some of the discomforts that Michael Easter put himself through and the learnings that he came away with. Because I think, again, we can take these and apply them to our creative lives as well. But first up is the idea that allowing ourselves to experience solitude and boredom, particularly in nature, can rewire our brains and recharge our bodies. I know we have talked about this idea a few times on the podcast, and we are both believers in spending time in nature. But, Suze, this book goes deep. I won't even get into all of it. I'm going to give you some, but I got a level of understanding about this topic that I had not previously reached before.
Specifically about being in nature or being bored in nature?
Both. So we know there's benefits to being alone, in solitude, without technology. We know that despite all this technology that allows us to stay connected at all times, even with that, nearly 50% of Americans report feeling lonely. Some have even called it a loneliness epidemic. But it turns out, even though this might seem counterintuitive, one of the best ways to combat loneliness is to spend more time alone. It builds our relationship to ourselves like a deep, trusting relationship with yourself. And it can actually lead to a feeling of never really being alone because you are with yourself. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, but when you said that, my eyes went wrong
What?
because I was like, the antidote potentially to loneliness is practicing being alone.
Pretty much. Think about this, and this all relates to comfort as well. So when we're like, oh no, I'm by myself, I feel uncomfortable, I need to call someone, I need to go out and do something, I need to be with people, we're reacting to that discomfort.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of, what if you could hang with the discomfort and get to the other side of it? You would establish potentially a great relationship with yourself. And you may find that, you know what, once I can get past a little bit of discomfort, I really like being with me. I like listening to music or reading a book or dancing in the living room or what have you. I would never know that if the minute that discomfort shows up, I get scared and call someone or do something fast.
Yeah, my mind is going to a couple of places. One is something that I learned from a documentary about the human emotion is one of the greatest predictors of happiness is meaningful connection with other people. So my mind goes to that. And I also think about, maybe it's all about moderation. It feels like the critical piece is hanging in with yourself long enough to get over the speed bump of discomfort.
That's right. No case is being made here that we don't need other people or, meaningful connections. Of course we do. But we're specifically addressing the discomfort of being alone.
It's funny. I'm a person who meditates, so I can sit and be alone. But if I'm not doing that, I want to be on my phone, like screens or that boredom thing. I think about it all the time. You did a Spark about it and you talked about how boredom is good for creativity.
Guess what? I'm about to tell you about it again.
It blows my butt off because I'm like, I find my tolerance for it is very low.
It's just uncomfortable.
It is uncomfortable.
So all of this, like being alone with yourself, can increase your creativity. It can increase your empathy. And then as it relates to nature, truly being alone in nature without any screens can cause that sense of boredom. Of course, like really get you to that, that boredom place real quick. As you said, we talked about this on the podcast. Boredom can be incredible for your brain. It can increase creativity exponentially. Right now, again, the moment we feel the tiniest bit bored, we reach for that phone. It's got everything, and we're constantly cramming in more input, but we're never letting it rest, like truly rest. Time in nature will do that. And like I said, in this book, he goes deep. I'm going to tell you a little bit more. Tip of the iceberg here. But according to Michael Easter, the famed biologist E.O. Wilson developed a theory called biophilia hypothesis, which says that we have an ingrained call to be in nature that is in direct competition with our desire to control our environment. We want both of these things. Dr. Judson Brewer from the Brown University Medical School, he's a psychiatrist, says, if given a choice, human brains are going to say, give me something I can control or predict. This has to do with survival. Tracking information so we can predict the outcome helps us to survive. But Dr. Wilson's theory goes like this. We evolved in nature and therefore have programmed within our genes a need to be in and connect with nature and living things. And if we don't, we go a little haywire as if we are missing a necessary nutrient in our body, mind, and sense of self. I feel that. I've never thought about this, but this book points out many civilizations have built nature into their daily lives as they considered it a necessary ingredient. Or as Wilson says, nature holds the key to our aesthetic, intellectual, cognitive, and even spiritual satisfaction. Think about it. And they didn't have scientific proof of this, but the Egyptians built a complex network of pleasure gardens. Cyrus the Great in 500 BC commissioned gardens in the capital of Persia to improve the health and the sense of calm in his city. There's a ton of examples in this book, but leave it to Japan to take this to the next level. In the early 1980s, as the country was becoming more urban and tech-focused, the country's forest agency created a nature-based wellness program and came up with a marketing term, essentially, Shinrin Yoku, which means forest bathing. And they prompted and promoted this sitting in or walking in the woods and taking in nature. Forest bathing. Since then, the country of Japan has done more than 100 studies of the effects of time in nature. Long story short, people who spend about 15 minutes sitting in and then walking through nature expressed all kinds of drops in blood pressure, heart rates, stress hormones, blood sugar, anxiety, depression, and on and on. Truly, there is now so much scientific evidence to support what we just naturally feel. We feel better when we spend time in nature. Of course, you have to go without your phone. This is not, let me sit up and look at my phone while sitting in nature.
Right.
This is being in nature. The University of Michigan discovered that 20 minutes outside 3 times a week is enough of a dose of nature to reduce the stress hormone cortisol in our bodies. Again, you have to go without your phone. A neuroscientist named David Strayer at the University of Utah studied the 3-day effect, which is a theory that just 3 days in nature without your cell phone will literally reset your brain. They took groups of kids, like 18 to 22-year-olds, I think, into the wilderness for 3-day trips. They let them bring their phones, but they did not tell them there will be no cell service where you are going.
Oh my God.
But you can bring your phones.
Oh.
So the kids arrived.
That was a hell of a reveal.
Honestly, this made me laugh so hard. The kids arrived, and day one, they would realize that they were not going to be able to post and message and be on their phone. So they went through all the stages of grief. Denial, where they're like walking around, holding their phones into the air, trying to find, like, it has to be here somewhere. anger, throwing their phones in their tents, just being pissed about it, bargaining. Can I just drive back to the last town we were in to get a signal? Depression, and finally acceptance. And literally, Suze, they were testing the brain waves throughout this whole process.
Oh my God.
On the first day, their brain waves were beta waves, frenetic, type A, go, 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 go brain waves. By day 3, they were coasting along with alpha and theta brain waves. As I'm sure you know, these are the brain waves that you experience when you are an experienced meditator or when you are in flow state. Alpha and theta waves literally reset your brain. They reset your thinking. They fight burnout. They revive you. I want to plan. I talked to Wes. I'm like, we need to plan just like a little 3-day retreat. And I'll tell Suze, I'm not going to have my phone on. We're just going to go. We'll bring puzzles. We'll go for walks. We'll do what have you. But seriously, this book made me question, like, how soon can you get yourself outdoors? Can you bring a journal or your watercolors and just be open to any creative ideas that come to you while you simply bathe in the forest? Forest bathing.
I'm thinking about how I live in a very pastoral setting.
Yes.
And there are extended periods of time, we've talked about this before, that go by where I don't even think to lift up my head and look out to see the clouds rolling by, the wind moving through the trees. I mean,
you need it, Suze. It is good for your brain.
I know, but it's insane because literally if I walked 12 feet and opened a door, I would be not just outside, but it's just like spectacular nature. And I have my head so far up my computer most of the time that I just walk by these picture windows and I just don't even see it.
Well, I say we're going to set some new goals. It's good for your brain. It's good for your brain.
I believe it. I believe it. I believe it. And I'm just observing myself and how I am failing at this.
Okay. Well, I don't want you to feel like a failure because there's opportunity, but let me continue on to some other things. Next up, Michael Easter delves into how physical challenges and new experiences improve our well-being. Obviously. This was really interesting though. Like, this is the thing, like some of the concepts I'm like, yeah, I know. But his research and his experiences in the Alaskan wilderness is just like, whoa, this was fascinating. There are many societies that build a physical challenge into a cultural rite of passage. And honestly, there's a lot of people that question why we don't have anything at all like this in American culture. And I don't mean the crazy ones, but I mean even a rite of passage of like doing like Habitat for Humanity or something, do a physical challenge, like build a house or whatever. Yeah. But I'll give you a few examples of these cultural rites of passage from history. So the young men of the Aboriginal people in Australia, these are Australian natives who lived on the continent for like 65,000 years. They would go on what they call a walkabout. They venture out alone into the Australian outback for up to 6 months. Now, this is land.
Wow.
It is incredibly hard to survive in. The temperature is over 100 degrees every day. The snakes are venomous and among the deadliest in the world. If you do not prepare for your quest by honing your skills in building shelter, hunting and foraging, understanding the plant life, what can be used as medicine, what will kill you, you're not going to make it back to camp, possibly at all. But if you did make it back, it was understood by everyone that you had grown from the experience, that you were physically and mentally tougher, and that you had a greater understanding of the world and your place in it. The Inuit in northern Canada have a similar tradition. When their children were 12 years old, the elders would lead them out into the Arctic for their first hunt, and they'd have to learn all the survival skills as they go. There's also the Maasai, a tribe of people who live in Kenya and Tanzania. Their young men were sent into the savannah alone to hunt a male lion with only a spear. Many different Native Americans would go on vision quests. They would go into the mountains alone, unarmed, without food, or sometimes or into the desert alone, unarmed, without food, and spend about a week in complete solitude. There are some cultures that still have rites of passage. The Dutch have a scouting tradition called dropping, where blindfolded kids are dropped in the woods at night with limited resources and they have to find their way home. Now, that reminds me of like, Boy Scouts or Eagle Scouts. I think they have some sort of thing that it culminates to called like wilderness survival skills or something to get that badge. But otherwise, we don't really have it. He compares all of this with the modern day sort of I don't know if it's just in America, but certainly in America, this cultural phenomenon known as helicopter parenting. And he cites the 1990s as the beginning of the helicopter parent in the US, according to a scientist at NYU. They say that that is when a wide swath of parents in the US stopped allowing their children to go outside unsupervised because of a fear of kidnapping. He says it has now turned into snowplow parenting, a term I had not heard before, which describes the way that parents are now literally shoving any obstacles out of their child's path.
Oh.
The fact is, and of course, remember, we're talking about comfort and discomfort. This is a parent being like, I do not want my child to feel uncomfortably challenged by anything. But the fact is, all of these rites of passage help forge a strong sense of self, of confidence, of identity. We might think we're helping someone if we help them avoid discomfort or pain, but in actuality, we're limiting their learning and limiting their overall potential and our overall, our individual potential. There's this phenomenon called toughening theory. Long story short, researchers at the University of Buffalo studied a large group of Americans, a variety of backgrounds, mixed genders. They found in a nutshell that people who have faced some stressors and some challenges in life, not an overwhelming amount, but multiple stressors, maybe a loss of a job, a loss of a loved one, a physical injury, these people became more resilient. They have an increased self-esteem. They tend to see challenges as opportunities and frankly have better life satisfaction overall. Again, I'm not talking about people who've experienced an overwhelming amount of trauma. Just talking about stress and challenges are far better for us than absolute smooth sailing. I have to say, I agree. I understand the movement and this moment that we're in time where we are trying to train people not to hurt others and become more aware of their behavior and the things that they say and do that might cause discomfort in other people. But I think that at the same time, we should be preparing people for how to deal with their discomfort. Because imagining a world where we all walk through life and no one ever causes us any discomfort is not realistic.
I had this thought the other day. As you just pointed out at the top of the Spark, humanity has been rocking it for hundreds of thousands of years. And I was like, in all that time, there has to have been people who made it out that were just like, no, nothing real bad ever happened. It was all pretty smooth sailing. And then I was like, no, that couldn't possibly be true. And then I was like, there's a lot of people that have moved through this life.
There's a lot of people that have moved through, but also I guess I would question, and so is that the ideal? According to this book, it would not be.
I do believe that's true. And another thing I was thinking about this week is, and I was saying to Nathan, my dear sweet Nathan, that some of the most challenging things that I've experienced in life are the things that make me me.
That's right.
And while at the time they were incredibly uncomfortable for extended periods of time, they are now the things that have made me me. So I'm thankful for them.
Absolutely. And I think you and I both agree they're often a place for us to create from.
Yeah.
In an effort to heal that, but to help others heal. And I actually do know people who are like, oh, I don't know. Nothing's really happened to me. I don't know what I would write about. And have felt a little sense of like, I wish I had something, some sort of challenge. I would probably argue that if you look deep enough, there are always things to write about. But in terms of a hero's journey, it's more interesting hero's journey when there is a big boulder in the road.
If there's been a dragon.
Yeah, and you conquer it.
Yeah.
So I really believe that it is important to learn to grow from our discomfort. And I think it's necessary in order to be a creative person to embrace discomfort. I don't know creative people who don't feel discomfort.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
So next up, Michael Easter talks about how thinking about death and impermanence can make us happier and help us to live more meaningful lives. Now, this is interesting as it relates to discomfort. And Susie, I know, like, you've done a whole spark on this, talking about the book, The Art of Dying Well. This is a topic. We talk about it a lot, so I'm going to keep this short because you can find other episodes of the Spark File and maybe more soon to come. Who knows? But I think it's fascinating to know that thinking about death can make us happier people. In his trip into the wilderness, he was literally facing the possibility of death every single day, maybe multiple times a day. Like, it was uncomfortable.
Mm.
But if we look to other cultures, they are taught to actively think about their own deaths. So he traveled to the kingdom of Bhutan in the Eastern Himalayas, and he learned there that the ashes of the deceased are turned into clay pyramids, put on display in public areas. Like, death is a part of life, and they embrace it. And studies have shown that Bhutan ranks as one of the happiest countries in the world.
Really?
Yes. And it doesn't have anything to do with their comfort of living, like these creature comforts that we all have.
Yeah.
But it actually relates to actively thinking about death and impermanence can make people happier. And here I think artists do have a bit of a leg up. I think that part of what creatives do naturally is examine the meaning of life and death. Not all artists, obviously, but I think we're examining what it means to be human, what mark we want to leave on the world. It is good to know that leaning into that is good for you. And the last bit of learning I want to highlight from the comfort crisis is how important it is to seek out new experiences. And I was just like, come on, here we go. You know, in case I haven't mentioned it on this podcast, my sweet love, Wesley, did something magical recently that wholeheartedly embraced this theory. Wes enrolled in this 3-week course to become a Bob Ross painting instructor. And he took himself out of New York City, went to Muncie, Indiana, where he knew no one.
So rad.
And he was not an expert in this painting technique. He had tried it a little bit, but he arrives there and there are people who are like, they've been painting with this painting technique for 20 years.
Wow.
So he puts himself in the center of this, like, completely new environment, completely new people, having to have a beginner's mind every day, having to be like, okay, I am not going to compare my work to their work over and over again. Just keep showing up for 3 weeks. He learned to paint and he learned how to teach it. It was like learning new skills that involved physical coordination, visual, mental coordination, all of the emotions that came up through all of this. And he got certified. He's a Bob Ross instructor. I'm so proud of him. My mind is blown by what he did. He now has a skill. No one can take that away from you, ever. You can't take that experience away. You can't take that skill away.
We were talking on the phone yesterday.
Yes,
you, me, and Wes.
yeah.
We were talking on the phone. And I was like, it's the first time I've heard his voice since he got back. And I was like, hey, how are you doing? And Wes always has a pretty positive sort of disposition.
He is. He's a happy being.
I was like, oh, this is somebody who has faced beginner's mountain,
A rite of passage.
and done something extraordinary and come back to tell the tale of it. And I have experienced that firsthand myself as well. When you tackle something like that, that's a really good example of something, because you don't have to put yourself into the Arctic wilderness
That is correct.
for 3 months or something. You can do something like that, which is joyous, but you're going to be a beginner.
You're going to be a beginner,
Yeah.
which is uncomfortable. That is the discomfort. And we're like, because we're constantly avoiding discomfort, we don't think to do these things. So Wes's achievement got me thinking about how often I put myself in an entirely new situation that might scare the crap out of me. And the answer is not often enough. I mean, I've done a fair amount of new stuff in the last few years, but this book has me passionately believing that it's not optional for human growth. And I think for our creativity, I think it's absolutely necessary. So I'm going to roll into a little bit of what do we make of it.
Okay.
I think we immediately consider how comfortable we have gotten in our creative process. Do we notice ourselves avoiding doing anything creatively that feels a little scary or uncomfortable? Or do we let ourselves think about it? In this book, Michael Easter talks about a Japanese concept called misogi. Now, in Japanese, it means ritual purification. It might mean, for example, traditionally, like sitting in freezing cold water or standing under an icy waterfall to cleanse yourself.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it goes back a long way, but the underlying belief is that doing something one day a year, doing this ritual one day, can profoundly impact the other 364. It's part of a mental and physical and spiritual renewal.
Wow.
So the idea of misogi has inspired a Harvard-trained physician named Dr. Marcus Elliott to adapt this idea. So for him and many, many followers of this idea, they use the term misogi to refer to using epic challenges, often in nature and often physical, to reset the mind, body, and spirit and expand your capabilities. They treat it with a lot of honor. They treat it like it's something you do for yourself. You're not to post about it or brag about it. You must truly challenge yourself, really explore your limits, explore that, like, where are the edges of my comfort zone? And this whole idea of this misogi, his misogi was the Alaskan wilderness. It's woven throughout the book. And in particular, like I said, he really focuses on our physical comfort. But I kept thinking time and time again how this pertains to our creativity. What if we push ourselves to explore those areas where we don't feel comfortable? Like something as simple as, being asked to draw a picture with our left hand, or write a haiku if you're right-handed, or you're right-handed if you're left-handed. Or write a haiku in 2 minutes. Like if you instantly feel discomfort, you found your edge.
Wow.
Your edge is right there.
Yeah.
So we can make a habit out of doing small things that get us out of our comfort zone. That's great. We can also challenge ourselves with a creative misogi once per year. Something big. His rules for a misogi are: 1, it has to be really hard, with only a 50% chance of success. And 2, you can't die. In other words, it has to be relatively safe. So this isn't about jumping out of a plane kind of risk taking. It could be that, but it is not about like 50% chance of living or dying. It is about just, it's okay to not succeed if you push yourself and found your boundary. He says the idea is if you have picked an appropriately hard task, you're going to hit a point where you think you cannot keep going, where you have reached your edge. But if you are able to keep going, you are going to have a moment where you can look back and say, I thought my edge was back there, but now I'm clearly past it. So I've sold myself short here. And that leads to the bigger question, which is, I've sold myself short here. Where else in my life am I selling myself short? So what if we embarked on creative misogis each year? You could choose something new that would make you feel uncomfortable, and see if you can even like enjoy the discomfort. How far can you push yourself? Take a cooking class, learn a new language, immerse yourself in a different culture, join a roller derby club, become a nude model for an art class, take an improv class, solo travel to a new place and figure it out, create a silent writing retreat for yourself and see how you do. Please send in more ideas. I'll take all the ideas because I'm pretty certain what I want to do once a year is set a creative Misoki for myself and just keep expanding as a human being and keep expanding as a creative. All of it is going to stretch our personal limits and stretch our creative limits. But it requires that you let yourself be a beginner, let yourself be bad at it. Who cares? Just be bad at it. It's fine. You're going to survive. It's not life or death. Fuck around and find out. Like, you just might realize you are capable of so much more than you allow yourself to be right now.
Now, baby Cams, when you were giving that list out,
Yeah.
you were saying this, a little bit of that, and you gestured to yourself when you said, like, roller derby.
Suze, I think I mentioned this a long time. Like, I wish I would have done this when I was younger. I don't think I can do it now, only because I think it would be dangerous to my back. But I fucking love roller derby. And I think it would be so much fun. And I think I would have been good at it.
Yeah.
Like, like when I'm playing cards and I turn into like super competitive, I feel like in roller derby, that's an asset. And you like want people on your team who are like, they're a beast.
Yeah.
They're going to take you down.
Yeah.
I think I would have done that.
So with those things that you listed, or maybe something that you didn't say, is there something that you have in your mind already that you would want to tackle?
I've been wanting to take a drawing class. I have never studied drawing at all. And I've been thinking about that. Doing improv, which I have done, but it's been a long fucking time. That would scare me in a fun way.
I have not done that. And that is something I've been meaning to do literally for decades.
Yeah.
But I think it's so scary to me.
Yeah, it's scary. But it is the best training in who cares? Okay, so that moment a moment ago wasn't funny. I'm on to the next. I can't obsess with the next moment. I can't obsess. It's such a great lesson in so many things.
This is an amazing spark. And as you were talking, I was like, oh man, on one hand, I feel like it could be argued that you and I are like trying new stuff.
That's right.
All the time.
And we don't have time for it to be uncomfortable. But it does. Sometimes we'll be like, okay, this feels uncomfortable. But clock's ticking. Here we go.
Yeah. So we do that. But then I think about things like cold water plunges.
That's right. Yes.
Laura, that is, to me, I'm just like, I don't want to do that. And I've had the health benefits and the emotional benefits of that explained to me by people who do it.
Yeah. I
don't even want to do like the cold water rinse at the end of a shower.
You know what, Suze? I think that's okay. I think that one's not for you then. I think that it should be something that like in the back of your mind has like ting ting on your.
I think the improv class is that for me.
Yeah.
For sure. But I also, as you were talking, I was like, these days, like in the last few months, I have observed myself where, Laura, our house is a total disaster area right now because we have renovations going on all over the place. But if you look at the things that I have accumulated, it's all about comfort. It's like puffy, big, soft, puffy sweaters and big puffy vests and like puffy slippers. And I am just like, I'm a comfort holic right now. And so this spark it's really challenging.
You feel called out. Listen, I think that it is fine to be comfortable. It's fine to winter. It's fine to all those things. It's just, like you said, it's everything in moderation. We don't have to be living in the Alaskan wilderness, challenging ourselves like in life or death situations daily. But I do think that like once a year or once every so often to ask yourself, what's a growth opportunity for me
Yeah.
that might expand the way, like, I don't cook. I mean, I don't cook. I don't cook so much that like I get nervous around people who do, and they'll just be like, "Can you chop that onion?" And I'm like,
I've
I don't
seen
remember
it.
how to chop an onion. What?
I've observed it. Yes,
You've
I've seen
observed
it
it.
all
I
go
get
down.
I get real nervous.
I think you came to our house and my mom was like, "Can you just
Uh-huh.
butter these pieces of bread? We're
Uh-huh.
making garlic bread. Will you
Yeah.
just like put some butter on each piece of bread?" And that's
Uh-huh.
sort of like, "Will you tell me
I just want to
exactly
do
how
it
much
exactly the way you
butter?"
want. I think it is because, well, I won't name names, but I have been highly criticized like when I was younger, and it was like I was shamed for, except I was young. I was,
Yeah.
16, but someone like completely shamed me for not knowing certain things in the kitchen.
And
And
you were like, "Bye."
it wasn't a partner. It was a family. I couldn't
I
say
don't
bye
mean,
to
I
this person.
mean,
Yeah.
bye to the kitchen. Like, were
Oh,
you like,
yes, bye to the
yeah,
kitchen.
bye to the kitchen. Yeah.
Yeah.
So a cooking thing might be good
A
for
cooking
you.
thing would scare me and would be super fun. Yeah.
Will you say the word again? An annual
Misogi.
misogi.
Misogi. The word has been, has evolved to mean other things, and now we'll evolve it further to call it a creative misogi.
Well, I don't want to culturally appropriate, but I love the idea. Call it what you will, but I do love the idea, now that the world has reopened and the Spark File gets back together for retreats and things like that, to have a day of creative discomfort. Here's the tricky thing though. I feel like every person, it's going to be different.
That's right.
What's uncomfortable
That
for me will not
Yeah.
be uncomfortable for you and vice versa.
Well, that's why it's not a misogi in that we're not standing under a icy waterfall,
Yeah.
but it should be personal. It is spiritual renewal. It's renewal, and we're just choosing to do it in a creative way. But it's not one size fits all.
Yeah.
And it's not even for public consumption. It's like between you and you.
Yeah. I love that. And I also love the idea of these. This is why I love this fucking podcast. I love now I will carry this challenge with me to note when I am feeling and subsequently rushing to avoid discomfort and see if I can just be like, why don't you hang in? I feel like this is a theme on this podcast. Why don't you just hang in and just look at the sky, or, just sit still and
Hang with
yeah.
that discomfort.
Yeah.
I want to say that Cesar A. Cruz said, art should disturb the comfortable and comfort the disturbed. I agree with that. And I say, let's push through our discomfort so that we can create things that heal and comfort others.
All right, Sparker. You
Let's
sparked
do
me,
it.
Sparker.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. And say the name of the book again.
The Comfort Crisis.
The Comfort Crisis by Michael Easter.
That is correct.
Thanks for that spark, Alex. And thank you and fuck you. Now I have to face
you have to
my
face the discomfort, but
in little and big ways.
We do it all the time, and I think that part of like our coursework is really about, and we've said it before, it is about normalizing what that discomfort feels like in our body as it relates to creativity, and being able to hang with it.
Yeah. And just training yourself that it's tolerable.
Mm-hmm.
And it does yield beautiful things.
It sure does. We can hang.
Laura, thank you for this spark.
You're welcome.
I learned so much today.
You're welcome. There's so much more in the book, friends. I am telling you, there's so much more.
All right. a comfort crisis. Michael Easter, get into it. Oh, Miss Sogi. Oh. So I think that's it.
I think you're right.
This episode of The Spark File was made on the lands of the Lenape people. And as always, we hope it put another bunch of sparks in your file. If there's a spark you'd like us to explore, unless it makes me uncomfortable, or if you
send those in, send those in especially.
If you'd like to learn more about how to coach with us to bring your creative ideas to life, you can email us at thesparkfile@gmail.com or submit it through our website, thesparkfile.com.
We'll even take your feedback, but you know the price of admission. First, we expect you to share a creative risk that you have taken recently.
You can follow us on social at The Spark File and be sure to subscribe, rate, and 5-star review this podcast. It really does help other listeners to find us. Also, if you like this podcast, we hope that you will share it with people that you love. And if you didn't like it, we are going to masogi you. We're going to put you under a freezing waterfall. And
just
that
so that they
be...
can cleanse and renew and get a
That's
fresh
right.
start with the Spark File.
It's not punitive. It's not punitive at all.
No, not at all. If something lights you up and gets your creative sparks flying, we are writing you a forever permission slip to make that thing that's been knocking at your door. It is your turn to take that spark and fan it into a flame.
Oh, friends, you know you got to take it
and make it.
Bye.
Bye, friends.
What's your masogi going to be?
It's a secret.
When I bump into something that inspires me, I dump it in my spark file. Could be something that I want to make or how I want to be. I pump it in my spark file. I jump into my spark file. Let's open up the spark file.
Hi, friends. Susan Blackwell from the Spark File here to let you know that the doors are open for the Spark File Illume, a 9-month group creativity coaching mastermind that invites you to be the Chief Creative Officer and Chief Marketing Officer of your creativity. But what does that mean? That means in 9 months in Illume, you will clarify and advance your big creative goals and learn how to effectively share your work with the world. Now, if you're listening to this and you're an experienced creative or an accomplished professional who seeks a space where it is safe to attempt something you've never tried before, or complete a big creative project, or take your work to the next level and acquire the skills needed to share your creative work with the world, Illume might be right for you. We are calling in emotionally intelligent, high-functioning creatives who are ready to level up. You can find out more by going to thesparkfile.com/Illume, but do it now to find out if Illume is right for you and to save with early bird discounts. That's thesparkfile.com/Illume. Take a leap, take a risk. Go to thesparkfile.com/Illume and join us for Illume.